Hello everyone, I am Simran Kaur, your science teacher from Shiv Jyoti Educational Group, and today we will revise two chapters, chapter 9 and chapter 10. So, we will start with chapter 9, soil. Open your books and come to page 109. These are important points. First, soil is formed by breaking of rocks. What is soil? Soil is earthly material in which plants are grown. So, it is formed by the breaking down of rocks. Large pieces of rocks, they break down into smaller pieces of particles and they form soil. Then humus, what is humus? Rotten dead matter present in soil. When plants and animals die, so their bodies are decomposed by the microorganisms which are present in soil, and that is known as humus, and humus increases the fertility of soil. So, can you tell me which layer of soil is most fertile? The top layer of soil, horizon A, is most fertile because of the presence of humus. Then depending on proportion of soil particles, there are three types of soil. As I told you that when large pieces of rocks, they break down into smaller particles. So, what are those particles? Depending on their size, there are four particles: gravel, sand, silt and clay particles. I have written them in according to their sizes. The particle size of gravel is the largest and clay is the smallest. Oh, sorry. Wait a minute. So, depending on proportion of soil particles, which soil particles? These. We have categorized soil into three types, and those types are sandy soil, clay soil and loamy soil. In sandy soil, as the name suggests, the proportion of which particle is more? Sand particles. In clay soil, proportion of clay particles are more, and in case of loamy soil, there is equal proportion of all particles. Now, next is water retention capacity, or we call it water holding capacity, the amount of water that soil can retain. Retain means hold. When we spill water on the ground, then that water is absorbed by the soil, so that water holding capacity is same, water retention capacity. Then removal of topmost layer of soil is called soil erosion. As we know, the topmost layer of soil is the most fertile layer. So, what are the factors which cause soil erosion? There are various agents that are involved in soil erosion, which are air, water, flood, forest fire, and it takes away the topmost layer, the layer horizon A. Now, internal question which you have to write on page number 110. In which horizon the roots of small plants are present? Small plants, the roots cannot penetrate deeper into the soil, so they are present in horizon A, topmost layer. Question 2 on page 112. Which minerals are generally found in soil that are used in industry? We know that the minerals, those minerals are obtained from the soil only. Few examples of those minerals are calcite, bauxite and gypsum. Next internal question on page 113. What is soil erosion? As we discussed in important points also, the removal of the top layer of the soil is called soil erosion. Now, this is your copy work. Question 1. Name the worm which increases soil fertility. That is earthworm. If you remember, earthworm is also known as farmer's friend because it helps in increasing the fertility of soil. Question 2. Which layer of soil is the most fertile? The most fertile layer of soil is topsoil or A horizon. Why this layer is most fertile? Because of the presence of humus in it. Question 3. What does soil provide to the plant? Soil provides nutrients and water to the plants. As we know that plants are grown where? In the soil. So, the food, the nutrients, the minerals, water, from where do they get? From the soil. Question 4. Why is soil considered one of the most important natural resource? Soil is a natural resource. Why it is important? Because many minerals that are used in industry are present in soil, as we discussed in internal question. Few examples are calcite, bauxite, gypsum. Then soil provides nutrition and water to the plant. It provides home to many insects, worms and burrowing animals. Now, differentiate between sandy soil, clayey soil and loamy soil. Sandy soil, high content of sand and low content of clay particles. As we discussed, there are 4 particles: gravel, sand, silt and clay. So, in sandy soil, proportion of sand particles are more and clay particles are less. Whereas, in case of clay soil, there is low content of sand and high content of clay, as the name suggests, and in loamy soil there is equal amount of sand, clay and silt. Then sandy soil has poor water holding capacity. Why sandy soil has poor water holding capacity? Because the size particles of sand, they are very large in size. So, many spaces are present in between particles. Because of these spaces, they cannot retain water. Water can pass easily through these spaces. So, that is why sandy soil has poor water holding capacity. But in case of clay soil, this soil has high water holding capacity. Why? Because of the size. Size of clay particles is less. So, these they have less spaces in between the particles, so they can hold more water, and that is why clay soil has high water holding capacity. Whereas loamy soil, average capacity of water holding, because this soil has equal amount of these particles. Next, large air spaces. You can see here large air spaces are present in sandy soil, and in clay soil less air space because particle size is less, and average air space again because equal amount of these particles are present. Then not good for most of the crops, as we know that crops need proper air and water for their growth. So, this soil do not have water, so that is why we cannot grow most of the crops in this soil. Whereas in clay soil, it is good for the crops which need plenty of water, because this soil can hold more amount of water. So, example paddy, which requires standing water, we can grow that crop in this soil. Then loamy soil, it is good for all types of crops because it provides proper air and proper water to our plants. Then why is clay soil heavy? Clay soil is heavy because it is poorly aerated and can hold more water than sandy soil. This is our sandy soil. It has less space for air, but it can hold good amount of water. So, that is why this clay soil is heavy. Why is loamy soil considered the best for growing plants? Loamy soil is the best for growing plants because it is mixture of sand, clay and silt. This soil contains right proportion of air and water for the growth of the plants. It can hold good water and air. Then what do you understand by the term weathering? Weathering is the process by which soil is formed. So, soil is formed by breaking of rocks by the action of air, water and temperature. This process of soil formation is called weathering, and except these agents, if microorganisms are involved, then that type of weathering is known as biological weathering. Then question 9, why sandy soil has poor water holding capacity? Sandy soil has large proportion of sand particles and small proportion of clay. As the name suggests, it has more sand particles. Then large particles of sand do not fit closely together. That is why water can drain quickly through the spaces between the sand particles, as we have discussed twice. Because of the more spaces, water cannot be held here. Then what is soil profile? Name the various horizons present in a soil profile. The vertical arrangement of horizon in a soil is called soil profile. A soil profile consists of 3 layers: topsoil or A horizon, B horizon and C horizon. Look, if we cut soil in vertical section, like piece of cake, when we cut piece of cake, it looks like this. We can see different layers. So same goes with soil. This vertical arrangement of layers is known as soil profile. First is top layer or A horizon, this is B horizon, C horizon, and at last comes bedrock. This layer is the most fertile layer, and roots of small plants are present in this layer. And what about the roots of huge trees? The roots can penetrate till here. Okay, so roots of big trees are present in B horizon, and this vertical arrangement is soil profile. Okay, that was all about chapter 9. Now it's time to revise chapter 10, respiration in organisms. So come to page 120 in your books. Points to remember: first, respiration is the breakdown of food into carbon dioxide and water. This chapter is all about respiration. Why do we respire? To get energy from the food which we eat. So how that process is done? By respiration. In this, the food which we eat, it breaks down into carbon dioxide and water, and energy is released. In different organisms, different respiratory organs are present. Like we human beings, in our body, what is present to respire? We have lungs, we have nose to inhale or exhale, but it is not same with all organisms. They have different organs like gills. Fishes and tadpoles, they have gills to respire. Spiracles in cockroaches or grasshoppers, spiracles are present. What are spiracles? Those small pores which are present on the lateral side of their body, through which they inhale or exhale. Then blowholes in whales, the hole is present at the top of their head. And by diffusion, if you remember, in unicellular organism like amoeba, paramecium, they respire by which process? By diffusion through their body. They exchange gases simply by diffusion. Now respiration, it is of two types: aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. What is aerobic respiration? Aerobic means air. We are talking about which gas? Oxygen gas. In aerobic, oxygen is present, but in case of anaerobic respiration, oxygen is absent. So generally we do what type of respiration? We show aerobic respiration. We'll discuss the equation which is involved in aerobic respiration. This is our food which we eat. When our body shows aerobic respiration, our foods break down into carbon dioxide, water, and large amount of energy is released. But when we do heavy exercise, our body starts showing this kind of respiration, anaerobic respiration. So in this, what are the products? This is food, glucose which we take. It breaks down into lactic acid and energy. Very small amount of energy is released. So this happens where? in our muscles of human body. Now this is respiratory system. What are the steps involved? First, through nose we inhale gas, then gas pass through this windpipe which is known as trachea. Then this windpipe is again divided into two subtubes which are known as, where it is, bronchi. Two bronchi, this yellow small tube is bronchi. Then these bronchi, they again sub-branches into bronchioles. You can see these root like structure, you can say this is bronchiole, and these bronchiole ends up where? You can see these sac like structure here, this is known as alveoli, and to this alveoli what is attached? Blood vessels, and this muscle is known as diaphragm. Okay. And one more thing, our lungs are covered by double membranous layer which is known as pleura. You can see this red line and this dark purple line, this is pleura, double membrane. Okay, that is all about our respiratory system. So when we inhale, when we breathe, the movement of which two parts are involved? Movement of rib cage and movement of this diaphragm. In green plants, stomata are present for exchange of gases, like we human beings, we respire, other organisms also respire. So what about plants? Do they have gills? They do this respiration by the process of diffusion, or they have lungs? No, they have nothing like that. They have stomata present on the leaves. And what are stomata? Now you have studied it so many times. This is structure of leaf. So many small pores are present, and these pores are known as stomata, and through these stomata the gases are exchanged. Which gases? Oxygen and carbon dioxide. But in case of non-green plants, instead of stomata, lenticels are present for exchange of gases. Stomata is present in green plants, okay, but in non-green plants lenticels are present. And what are lenticels? Let's say this is a branch of any non-green plant. So you will see these small lines on their branch, and these lines are known as lenticels. Through these lenticels they exchange gases, they respire. Internal question which you have to write on page 121. First, name the pores present on the lateral side of body of insects like cockroach or grasshopper. Those pores are known as spiracles, through which they exchange gases. Next question, you have to write on page 122. Name two animals in which gills are the breathing organs. We discussed the important points. Fishes and tadpoles, they have gills because they are aquatic animals. Next question on page 124, what is the role of stomata in plants? Like right now we discussed stomata stomata help in exchange of gases. So stomata are the pores present on green parts of the plant and help in exchange of gases. Always remember green parts. And in non-green plants, lenticels are present. Now this is your copy work. First, name two organisms in which exchange of gases occur by diffusion through their body surface, and those organisms are amoeba and paramecium. This is body of, let's say, amoeba. This is amoeba. So exchange of gases takes place directly from their body surface by which process? Diffusion. Understood? Then what is pleura? Lungs are surrounded by a double membranous layer called pleura. As I show you that red line and dark purple line, that was pleura. Define the term breathing rate. The number of times a person breathes in a minute is called his breathing rate. What does breathe means? The process in which we inhale and exhale. One time inhaling and one time exhaling is a breathe. So, breathing rate, the number of times we breathe in 1 minute, that is breathing rate. So, for a normal person, for resting person, the breathing rate is about 15 to 16 times in a minute. But when we perform any activity or when we do heavy exercise, then it can go up to 25 per minute. Question 4, what is the role of hair present in nose? As you have seen, we have hair, small thin hair present inside our nostrils. So, what is the role of those hair? They filter the air. As we know, the air around us is very polluted. It contains microorganisms and dust particles. So, if we will inhale those air particles directly, then it can harm our body. So, filtration of air is must. So, natural hair are present in nose. Hair present in nose filter the air by trapping the dust particles and germs present in air. Then question 5, name the steps involved in process of respiration. There are 2 steps which are involved. First is breathing and second is cellular respiration. Breathing is simply inhaling and exhaling, and in cellular respiration breakdown of food takes place. Then what is alveoli? Alveoli, they are tiny sac-like structures present at the end of bronchioles and surrounded by blood capillaries are called alveoli. If you know the whole track, first nose comes, then windpipe, then it divides into 2 sub-branches known as bronchi, and then those bronchi are divided into bronchioles, and at the end of bronchioles this alveoli is present, and these alveoli are surrounded by blood capillaries. As we know that exchange of gases takes place, our blood carry oxygen rich blood and carbon dioxide rich blood. So, from which part those gases are exchanged? Through blood capillaries which are present around alveoli. This alveoli gives oxygen to our blood and it takes carbon dioxide from our blood. Then why does exhaled air make the lime water milky? Okay, which gas do we inhale? Oxygen is necessary, and we exhale, we give out which gas? We breathe out carbon dioxide. So, exhaled air contains large amount of carbon dioxide gas which turns lime water into milky. If you remember the chemical reaction in that chapter, physical and chemical changes, this lime water, it turns milky when we pass carbon dioxide gas through it, and the gas is carbon dioxide when we exhale. Then how does respiration take place in insects? Insects respire through spiracles and trachea. Oxygen rushes through small pores known as spiracles into tracheal tube. It diffuses into body tissues. Carbon dioxide from the cell goes into the tracheal tubes and move out through spiracles. Let's draw a diagram, a very rough sketch. Let's say this is grasshopper. Oh, where is eraser? Let's take a big size. Okay. Now, on the lateral side, small pores are present, which are known as, these pores are known as spiracles, and to these spiracles a network of tube is present, and this tube is known as trachea. You remember from which part exchange of gases takes place? Through these spiracles. So, they inhale, let us say, oxygen, and that oxygen passes to this tracheal system to these trachea, to these tubes, and through these tubes oxygen reaches to every body cell. It reaches to the cell of this each cell of this insect, and when they exhale, when the cell gives out carbon dioxide, so this same tube carries carbon dioxide gas, and that gas is passed out from their body through these pores known as spiracles. Now differentiate between respiration and breathing. Respiration, it is a biochemical process, a chemical change, it is a chemical change, whereas breathing is a physical process, simply inhaling and exhaling is taking place. Then respiration, it involves breaking down of food to produce energy. A food, a glucose, it is breakdown into carbon dioxide and water, and in human body, in absence of oxygen, it breaks down into lactic acid. Whereas breathing, it involves exchange of gases. Then respiration, it occurs inside the cell, as we call it cellular respiration, it occurs inside the cell, whereas breathing, it occurs outside the cells. In respiration, enzymes are involved, and in breathing, enzymes are not involved. So what are enzymes? Enzymes are substances which are present in our body, and they increases the rate of reaction, the rate of chemical reaction which is taking place in our body. What is the mechanism of gaseous exchange in human? Mechanism of gaseous exchange involves inhalation and exhalation. So what happens when we inhale? So these are the steps of inhalation. Ribs move outward and upward while diaphragm moves downward. As I told you during that diagram, that movement of rib cage and diaphragm is involved. So when we inhale, when we are filling our body with air, we need more space. So to create more space, ribs are moved outward and upward, and diaphragm moves downward. So the size of chest cavity increases and our lungs get filled with air. Then air pressure inside lungs decreases while atmospheric pressure increases. We know that pressure always moves from high area to low area. So the pressure inside lungs decreases. Inside our body pressure is low, and outside our body pressure is high. So it will, what will be the direction? It will move from outside to inside, and the air rushes into lungs. Now this is how we inhale air. Now what are the steps of exhalation? Just opposite. Now during exhalation, we are giving out that air, so we do not need more space. So ribs move inward and downward, and diaphragm moves upward. So automatically it reduces the size of chest cavity. Now we will talk about pressure. Air pressure inside lungs increases while atmospheric pressure decreases. Now this time pressure inside our body is more and pressure outside our body is less. So what will be the direction of movement? It will from inside to outside. So the air is pushed out of the lungs. These were steps of exhalation. Now differentiate between aerobic and anaerobic respiration. Aerobic, it takes place in the presence of oxygen, whereas anaerobic, it takes place in the absence of oxygen. The main gas which we are talking about is oxygen, presence or absence of oxygen. In aerobic, glucose is completely oxidized, whereas in anaerobic, glucose is partially oxidized. Oxidized means glucose, the breaking down of glucose, it is completely oxidized because sufficient supply of oxygen is there. But in case of anaerobic, oxygen is not sufficient, oxygen is not there. So that is why glucose is partially oxidized and we get different products. Aerobic respiration releases more energy because glucose is completely oxidized. That is why we get large amount of energy, whereas anaerobic respiration releases less energy. In aerobic, both the cytoplasm and mitochondria are involved, whereas anaerobic, it takes place only in cytoplasm. If we talk about structure of cell, then there are two things present, not only two things, so many things are present, out of which cytoplasm and mitochondria is there. Inside our cell, a fluid is present which is known as cytoplasm, and mitochondria are known as powerhouse of the cell. From these units we get energy. So, in this aerobic, both are present, cytoplasm and mitochondria, whereas in anaerobic only cytoplasm is present, it takes place. So, that was all about chapter 10. I hope you understood both chapter